Hi and welcome to Fun Swedish. När kom du till Sverige? Hur länge har du varit i Sverige? If you have ever been to Sweden, I'm sure you have gotten these questions before. But you might be answering them wrong, grammatically wrong. Even if these questions seem kind of similar, because they both want to know about your stay in Sweden, they still require different types of prepositions. För plus sedan or I. And they are very easy to mix up. And this mix-up is one of the most common mistakes Swedish learners make. Prepositions are tricky and scary when you learn a new language because there's often no clear rule or logic behind them. At least from your mother tongue perspective, because you can't really translate them. You just need to learn when to use them by heart. Sometimes prepositions in Swedish work just like English and sometimes they don't. Let's start with the first question. När kom du till Sverige? When did you come to Sweden? Or when did you arrive to Sweden? Then you need to answer using these two prepositions. För plus sedan. These two combined would be the English ago. For example, när kom du till Sverige? Jag kom för 6 månader sedan. I came 6 months ago. This is a bit weird because what we really say in Swedish is I came for 6 months since. This doesn't make any sense in English, but for Swedish it does. For an English speaker, you just need to think that this för and sedan combined is our ago. I came to Sweden 6 months ago. Jag kom till Sverige för 6 månader sedan. And to our Spanish-speaking community, this för plus sedan would be like the Spanish hace. Hace 6 meses. För 6 månader sedan. So remember, they need to go together. You just put the time frame in between. Like in this example, we said för 6 månader sedan. But you can also use other alternatives. For example, jag kom för 1 år sedan. Or, jag kom för 1 vecka sedan. Or, jag kom för 1 dag sedan. Another bonus tip is that Swedish people very often pronounce this sedan as sen. Especially if we speak very fast, like we do here in Stockholm. So, the examples we said before would sound like this. Jag kom till Sverige för 1 år sedan. Jag kom till Sverige för 1 vecka sedan. Or, jag kom till Sverige för 1 dag sedan. So remember, sedan becomes sen when we speak faster. And you might hear that some Swedes, especially Stockholmers like I am, they might say, jag kom till Sverige för 1 år sedan. So this år becomes sen together with sen. This happens when we have an R that collides with an S. Like in this case, we have the R from år and we have the S from sen. So when you say it really fast, it sounds more like a sh sound, år sedan, instead of år sen or år sedan. So pay attention to this, you don't need to say it when you speak, but Swedish people might say this a lot. Jag kom till Sverige för 1 år sedan. And remember, not in all places they say like this, but it's very common in certain areas in Sweden. And no matter how you pronounce it, the important for you to know is that this för and then the sen makes the equivalent of the ago in English. Okay, so let's move on to our next question. But before we do that, don't forget to put a like and subscribe to our channel if you haven't done it yet. And these subscribers and likes are very important to us because the more we get, the more videos we can make for you because we can put time in doing them. So please, don't forget to subscribe and put a like. So back to our next question. When you have learned this för plus sedan, then it's very tempting to use it all the time. Also for this next question we're gonna hear. But you shouldn't use it. Hur länge har du varit i Sverige? How long have you been in Sweden? And to this question, maybe you want to say, for 6 months. But in Swedish, we don't use for when we say it. We don't use för, which would be kind of the translation. Instead, we use something else. We use the most common letter in Swedish, which is I. Hur länge har du varit i Sverige? I 6 månader. Hur länge har du varit i Sverige? I en vecka. Hur länge har du varit i Sverige? I ett år. So, remember this. The answer to all the questions about how long you have been doing something is always I in Swedish, not för. And this is actually one of the most common mistakes. And I totally understand why, because it's very tempting to want to translate the same preposition as you would use in your language. In English, again, you would use for. I have been here for 6 months. But in Swedish, we use I 6 månader instead. And if you hear a Swede use the wrong preposition in English or in any other language, it's because they are using the Swedish logic. And the same thing can happen to you when you speak Swedish. One of the hardest things when you learn a language like Swedish is to think differently from your language. And accepting that all languages have their own way of seeing the world is the key. Some of my students, they ask me, but what would happen if I say för instead of I in Swedish? Well, it would be grammatically wrong. They would probably be able to understand you, but it will still sound very, very weird. Like if I would say in English, I have lived in Sweden in 2 years, instead of saying for 2 years. Well, the same thing happens when you don't say I in Swedish. New question for you. Hur länge har du lyssnat på min YouTube? I cirka 10 minuter. How long have you been listening to my YouTube? For approximately 10 minutes. To this question, hur länge har du lyssnat på min YouTube? You can actually just answer by saying 10 minuter. It's okay. But if you're going to put any preposition, it needs to be I and not för. Så, before you go, don't forget to subscribe and put a like. Hej då, vi ses nästa vecka!